subscribe to that particular view. I rise to condemn the Chancellor's austerity budget in the strongest possible terms. I rise to excoriate it, to revile it, and I will explain why. The spending cuts of 30 billion have left people paying the price for a decade of Conservative economic mismanagement. It will impact the poorest the hardest, while those profiteering from the crisis, and we know who they are, have been let off the hook. The Chancellor announced he was sticking to his cash spending plans for the next 2 years, meaning public sector pay rises of just 2%, with inflation at 7% next year, which would result in a 5% real terms pay cut for public sector workers across the country. Whatever Jeremy Hunt claims, this amounts to taking £30 billion away from people who need it during a cost of living crisis, both directly and through cuts in services. The cuts will force local councils and vital national public services to deny people vital support. Yet we know there is enough wealth in this country for us to avoid the dire economic situation that this Conservative government is forcing us into. The problem is that wealth is concentrated in too few hands when it should be spread throughout the economy to the benefit of everybody. Now, I can tell you what the Green Party would do. We'd introduce a 1% wealth tax on the super rich. Obviously, that's nobody in your lordship's house. And we would increase taxes on unearned income to ensure there's sufficient money to fund the public services we need and deserve. Now, that also brings me to one of the questions I really would like answered by the Noble Lady the Minister today, and in fact, to two. The Noble Lady the Minister talked about a stronger NHS. Now, does that have a privatised element, or is it still completely public? If the Noble Lady could tell me that, that would be fantastic. And also, the Noble Lady the Minister mentioned new hospitals. I really would like to know where and when and how many. That must be possible to tell us. Now, the Green Party would also close the loopholes in the windfall tax to enable investment in green solutions to the energy and the climate crisis, not schemes like Sizewell C that will cost a fortune to build, will come on stream far too late to make a difference, and will be incredibly polluting during its construction phase. And these measures would put an end to the spiral of Conservative chaos and guarantee an investment in the green infrastructure and world-class public services that our country hopes for. Now, several noble lords have mentioned how good growth is, how necessary it is, how stabilising it is. That is complete nonsense, I'm afraid. Growth actually destabilises the planet. And the Noble Lord Howarth very kindly covered the issue of climate change being completely absent from the autumn statement, so I don't need to go into that. But I can tell you, growth is not necessarily good. And let me ask the government as well, why on earth did they cancel the green stuff and leave tens of thousands of people with drafty homes and huge energy bills? Why don't we save everyone money and tighten up the standards for new homes so that they're all net zero now? We shouldn't even be going for net zero. We should be going for carbon negative. And that can be done. It is more expensive, but it saves money in the long term. It saves homeowners money. It saves the government money in terms of health and illness. And it will help to deal with the climate emergency. The only people who will be put out are the developers who quite possibly donate to the Conservative Party. Now, the Green Party proposals also include taxing the wealth of the richest 1% households to raise at least £70 billion, imposing a dirty profits tax without any loopholes on the oil and gas companies who currently make huge sums from fossil fuels and the energy crisis, which of course is extremely damaging to our planet and to our future security on all sorts of fronts. And we will provide increased funding for the Environment Agency and Ofwat to ensure proper enforcement of privatised water companies so they invest in the infrastructure needed to end the scandal of sewage being poured into the rivers and seas. I have been highly amused by the number of MPs who rush to say nothing to do with us in spite of the fact that they voted it through in the other place. Now, money raised from the wealth tax and the dirty profits tax would help fund a new green skilled workforce, a dash for renewables to bring down bills, a national home insulation programme to keep people warm, free childcare to ease the cost of living burden, reducing the cost of travelling by train and bus to make public transport cheaper than travelling by car, an end to the sewage scandal, a national minimum wage of £15 an hour, and decent pay increases that reflect rising inflation for public sector workers. More Tory austerity will create fear in communities across the country. Services are already facing extreme pressures, and the country can't stand billions of pounds of more spending cuts. And while the government seems to belatedly acknowledge the importance of driving down our use of gas through energy efficiency, the measures announced in the statement go nowhere near far enough to help people who need their homes insulated right now. Our tax-raising alternative would mean polluting companies and the very richest households contribute more, while our investment in a rapid move to a net zero economy would fund the new skilled, sustainable, well-paid jobs that will be needed to replace those reliant on fossil fuels. Our plans ensure that those most able and those most responsible pay, while the vast majority reap the rewards of a rapid move to a green economy. While I'm laying out our measures as well, I will just mention that we really ought to have an immediate freeze on rent rises and a ban on evictions by landlords who simply want to increase rents between tenancies. The Scottish Government has done that, and I don't see why we couldn't do it here. It would be a very quick measure and will make people feel a lot safer. And please, I don't want to hear any more in your Lordship's chamber, ministers saying, oh, well, nobody's come up with other ideas. We have. Lots of people have better ideas, and we really need to think about them. And, of course, they are better ideas because this government is washed up and out of ideas itself.
My Lords, it's a pleasure to follow the noble lady